Hello everybody, this is the Vikstrand, and the movie we're going to talk about today is of course The Untouchables, which itself is almost untouchable in of its own. But I'm going to talk about the casting decision of one thing of this movie. It is common knowledge that Bob Hoskins was the first choice and contractually obligated and paid actually to play Al Capone. But in the last possible second, they actually got their hands on Robert De Niro. And because Robert De Niro is a bigger star than Bob Hoskins, they went with De Niro. Now, Bob Hoskins wasn't too bothered by, being bumped off the Untouchables movie because he, got paid and stuff. And he told, I think it was Brian De Palma, and he said something, and I'm paraphrasing, that don't worry about it. Cast me the next time you don't want me to appear in a movie. So that was that. So De Niro was of course a big signing for them, and a reason for that. There was a lot of buzz going around, all the method acting, meeting up with the tailor of Al Capone and stuff like that, which probably wasn't true, but shut up about that, it's a good story. But call me a heretic and call me blasphemous or call me handsome, but to me, I've always thought that I think that Bob Hoskins would have been a better Al Capone than Robert De Niro. De Niro was such a late replacement, and I never felt that he was so engaged in the role as Bob Hoskins would have been. And I also think Bob Hoskins would have been funnier and more charming and more devious as Al Capone than De Niro was. De Niro was good. De Niro was great in this movie, but I think this would have been a great time for Bob Hoskins to show what he actually could do. But enough said about the Bob Hoskins versus Robert De Niro debate. We're going to talk about the movie that I personally think is a really good one, and it's called The Untouchables. So this movie is of course about the struggle between Eliot Ness and Al Capone. Eliot Ness is a treasury officer, which gives him some kind of policier power, I guess, who is going to come in and try to, enforce the Prohibition Act, and he's going after Capone, of course. He tries first to do it, by the book and the law and stuff like that, but unfortunately for him, Al Capone has too many of his fellow officers on his payroll, so the first time they try to bust a shipment of Canadian whiskey, they end up with umbrellas. And he's made to look like a fool. And he's trying to figure out what is he going to do. The answer comes in the form of Malone, a veteran beat cop and totally honest police officer played by a fantastic Sean Connery. Sean Connery argues that you cannot use just the law. You have to use the law and then what you're going to do. So they put together a small little group of uncorruptible or untouchables. I actually like the Swedish title, the Uncorruptible, more than the Untouchables, but I digress. So this little group consists of Eliot Ness, aka Kevin Costner, Malone, Andy Garcia, and a bookworm that is kind of a badass at times. He's kind of fun, sent from Washington, who actually brings up the fact that they should, try to nail him for tax evasion rather than murder, corruption, racketeering, and all the stuff they should be doing. Better than nothing, as he says. So we have an ultimate fight going on between Eliot Ness and Al Capone. You can make a pretty solid case that Eliot Ness is a pretty boring character. It is a wooden and a bit of a stick in the mud. But I think that is what his character is supposed to be, and I don't know if it is a coincidence that he's played by Kevin Costner. This is a character that Kevin Costner seems to be born to play. And this was also during the time of Kevin Costner's career where you felt like he really gave a shit what he was doing and he was really engaged, even though his characters wasn't as, flamboyant and out there. But Eliot Ness is surrounded by a plethora of colorful and very flamboyant characters. Andy Garcia is great. Rob De Niro is very good as Al Capone, as I said, even though I think Bob Hoskins would have been better. But Malone is the show stealer. He is an absolute show stealer. Sean Connery is absolutely fantastic. It's one of his best performances, I think. There is so much passion and there's so much cynicism and there is so much joy to his veteran beat cop that is totally honest and stuff like that. I love him so much in this movie. It's also kind of fun that this was the movie there that Sean Connery got an Academy Award for. I think that's kind of awesome. So the action sequences are great and the suspense is high because the master of suspense is here to make this movie awesome. Brian De Palma is one of my favorite directors of all time. Not everything he does is great, but I love the craftsmanship behind his movies. So of course we're going to have some rather suspenseful moments and a bunch of rather amazing sequences. And boy howdy, we'll get that in a second. I love this movie so much. This is a weird hybrid of gangster movie, cop movie, and it feels almost like a western in some parts. I love the costumes, I love Ennio Morricone's music, I love the camera work, the cinematography is great in this one. Acting is fantastic, and to top it all off, we have the stairways sequence. The stairway sequence with the baby stroller on the train station is one of the single greatest sequences that has ever been made in the 1980s, possibly even of the entire 20th century. I love it so much. It just builds and builds and builds. You don't know where it's going, and then it goes boom, which is also one of the reasons why this movie cannot reach quite the pantheon of fantastic 80s movies, because they blow their load before the a little bit underwhelming and a bit rushed ending. Now I know that you want to wrap up things, but considering what they had done, 10-15 minutes prior to this one, it still is kind of a, really, this is all we're gonna get? We went from a shooting to a stabbing essentially. The tension is there, but it isn't as high as it was prior to this one. You are behind Eliot Ness all the way. I love the group dynamics, I love the characters, how they work off each other, and they also are able to squeeze in a good old grandpa death match between the chief of police and Sean Connery. It's mildly fun. One thing I really like about this movie is how tight it is. They have maybe 180 minutes of screen time that they have squeezed into 2 hours, and it doesn't feel forced. The movie just flies by. It's so entertaining. It's such a cool, nice looking movie, by Giorgio Armani, who has done all the suits. Everybody looked really suave in this movie. And I really recommend this to anybody who likes Brian De Palma's movies, anybody who likes gangster movies, anybody who likes cop movies, period piece movies. It's all here and it's all fantastic. Now, the ending is the only thing that I don't think is great. It is a good ending and it wraps up pretty nicely, but it feels a little bit rushed and it feels a little bit under-delivered, and I'm okay with it. It's not a bad ending. It is not just as good as it has been prior to this one. I love the scope of the movie. The sequences at the Canadian border, I think, is fantastic. This is a fast-paced, well-acted, well-scripted movie with great music, with fantastic cinematography, great costumes. Everything looks great. It's like an expensive Christmas present wrapped in wonderful paper and with a very nice Armani bow tie on it. I'm giving this movie 89 points. If nothing else, see it for just the stairway sequence, and for Malone, and for the rest of the guys, and for the rest of the movie. So I'll see you next time from, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.